everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G from Simply G, joined by my wonderful co-host, as always, Ray from Whimsical Pictures. And today, we have a very exciting topic to talk about. We're going to be talking about Yuri manga. Yay!
Yay!
And so, like with the last episode where we talked at length about boys' love, today we're going to be talking about Yuri manga, which is, if you're not aware, manga about the romantic relationships, falling in love and kissing between two girls, and sort of everything that entails. And hopefully we'll be able to go into a little bit of the history, where Yuri started, what it turned into, and how it exists today, audience and the creators, some of our favorite titles, as well as sort of just the vast amount available both in Japanese and English, and all of the different Yuri that we are seeing both in the past and currently, and hopefully answer some of the questions you guys sent in.
Yes. And we did receive a lot of really great questions and really took them into account when building what we want to talk about today. So
yes,
we might not mention your question by name, but we will hopefully cover all of the questions or most of the questions through our discussion today.
And thank you everyone who sent in questions as always. If you have a question for an upcoming topic or podcast, I do always post about our next topic for the podcast on my Twitter. Ray obviously kind of spreads it around as well, so you can just submit it that way, or you can leave a question in the comments below. We do try and read everything and incorporate every question that we get into our podcasts. So help us help you guys.
We'll talk regardless of whether we have questions guiding us, but if we have questions, we will try to incorporate them.
And do our utmost to answer them to the best of our ability.
Yes.
So, with Yuri manga, I think, as I said, it is generally the homosexual relationships between two women. And it's a little bit of a curiosity because in the West, I think the perception is definitely that Yuri is complementary or comparable to BL, boys' love. And in actuality, although they come from a similar kind of community and background, they really aren't meant to be regarded as such.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you go back far enough, both kind of proto-BL stories like The Heart of Thomas or Kaze Toki no Uta, and early Yuri stories, Class S novels and manga would just be described as shoujo manga.
Yeah.
Or shoujo novels. But these days, they have evolved into two very different industries.
Yes.
And I do think that even in Japan, BL is the much more lucrative of the two. I think Comic Yuri Hime is doing very well for itself. That's like the main Yuri magazine. I don't know if there are any other dedicated Yuri magazines left, except for Galette, which is crowdfunded, specifically aiming at lesbian creators making stories for a lesbian readership. We are seeing more Yuri titles in mainstream magazines, like you see with Bloom Into You, I guess would be the big obvious example, as well as A Tropical Fish Yearns for Snow, which we will be getting in English soon.
Yes. Bloom Into You, for those who aren't reading it, is available from Seven Seas. It's wonderful, has a relatively new anime. Tropical Fish Yearns for Snow is a title I know that Ray absolutely loves and shills it whenever she can. I'm very excited, and that one is coming to us from Viz, and I'm looking forward to it. The new first volume is debuting very, very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that one.
And pre-order it. It's set in the best prefecture in Japan.
So,
Mine.
Yes. So Yuri manga, you mentioned sort of that it comes from shoujo manga, as does BL. But looking at it historically, it's interesting to compare the situations that caused this type of manga to be created and the intent of it as well, and how the culture for young women at the time influenced this type of manga.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, BL, as we know it, kind of grew out of Yuri manga.
Mm-hmm.
It also grew out of course, slash fiction, the whole Kirk and Spock early slash fan fiction culture. But it also sprang up out of this long tradition of not homoerotic, but homoromantic stories between girls, which we would probably refer to as class S or S relationships, which is a term that comes up a lot when you talk about Yuri manga.
Yes, unavoidable.
Yep. And I'm not gonna go into it super in depth because there is a lot of really interesting research into S relationships and early Yuri stories that is super worth reading, but I don't want this podcast to be a history lesson. So instead, I'll just briefly recommend what I think is the book most helpful and educational to the two of us, I think.
Yes.
In terms of early girls' culture, class S relationships, early shoujo manga, all that stuff.
All the good stuff.
Yes. So this book is an academic text, but it's not overly dense. I found it quite accessible for what it was, and it's not particularly long either. I think right around 200 pages?
Yeah, something along that.
Ish. So this book is called, well, you have it in front of you, so you can say the subtitle.
Yeah. So it's Passionate Friendship, The Aesthetics of Girls' Culture in Japan. It's written by Deborah Shamoon and is, as we said, an academic text. It's published by University of Hawaii Press. And it's fairly easy to get your hands on. I don't think it is in any scarcity or anything like that. Definitely worth the read, especially if this type of topic and cultural impact is something that you are interested in. Well worth the read.
I think G was able to find it used, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I was able to get access to it through interlibrary loan in the States. So either of those methods will probably knit you a copy pretty easily. We will try to remember to link that in the description.
Yeah.
Highly recommend the read for those who have a more academic interest in manga history. But today, the Cliff Notes version.
Yes.
Okay, so in the late Meiji era, girls of so-called good breeding, more upper middle class and upper class girls, were more or less expected to be sent to these girls' missionary schools. They weren't necessarily there for the religious education, but more so because they were considered Western and modern. Those two words were kind of mixed together.
Synonymous.
In Japanese perception at the time. There's a word from that era called haikara, which essentially just means something that is stylish because it is modern. And Western.
Yes. For those who have seen it, there's a film called Haikara-san, Go for Miss Modern, and is set in an exact period and shows off this commonality very readily as to our protagonist's mindset and the changing world around her.
And I haven't seen the movie, but I highly recommend the manga. I really like it.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good series.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Ranmaru-chan is my love.
Yes. Amazing, Ranmaru. But from those boarding schools, all-girls school, missionary schools, we see this idea of a purely feminine space.
Yes. These girls were very strongly discouraged from any kind of fraternizing with boys. So they ended up really just hanging out with other girls and forming their own circles within their schools, which led to the creation of this idea of the S relationship. S comes from the English word sisters. I've also seen it associated with the German word Schwestern, which also means sisters. You know, cool Western words.
Yeah.
So in this relationship, you have an elder sister and a younger sister who are two classmates, a senpai and a kohai. The elder sister is always the one who initiates because she is meant to be the masculine member of the relationship. So she would usually send a letter to the younger sister, like declaring her love, and they would start a letter exchange back and forth and enter this very deep and exclusive friendship. These relationships were always monogamous.
It's very reminiscent of things like from the period of Anne of Green Gables, like this bosom buddy, your closest soulmate, feminine friend who you have this relationship with that's like closer than anyone else, but at the same time isn't inherently meant to be seen as romantic.
Yeah. So I actually taken, I think, from Passionate Friendships and pulled from a Japanese source. This is a letter meant to initiate a relationship between an elder sister and a younger sister. And it kind of gives you the idea, I think. So it says, "A bouquet of flowers for my beloved Shizue-sama, to my little sister, Shizu-chan. The first time I saw you, how my eyes went wide with delight. Please, you must somehow believe in this elder sister and form an eternal bond with me. I am waiting to see your smile, so when we meet in the hall, please give me a smile that shows your white teeth, okay? This is my greatest wish, so please believe me. And don't take it the wrong way. And please send me a letter in your beautiful, perfect handwriting as soon as possible, okay? Really, promise you'll write to me. With much love, your big sister."
Imagine getting that.
I would love it. I'd be so into it. This shit's aesthetic as fuck.
Teenage girls and their aesthetics.
So yeah, it's about as straight as two boys hanging in a hot tub.
5 feet apart.
Because they're not gay. It's all more complicated than we're making it out to be.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's not.
Yeah. That's the general gist of it, I think.
So that idea of this perfect, girls' school full of beautiful gardens, and like you have the tall, dark-haired girl and the short, cute, blonde girl, like...
innocent, naive, to the ways of the world.
A little spoiled.
Yeah.
Just like caressing each other under the tree. That is quintessential Yuri imagery.
Yes.
And has been since the beginning of time.
Yes. And interestingly, that brings up this idea, or the beginning of where the Yuri comes from, that word, and why lily imagery is so prolific within this type of manga. And that is because of that almost spiritual connection this relationship is supposed to be within Class S stuff. For those unfamiliar, the white lily in Catholicism is very much connected to the Virgin Mary. So it is definitely this pure, unsullied woman. And so that's what this relationship is meant to be, like this emblematic.
And actually the white lily was used as an emblem for many girls' missionary schools because of what it represents in Catholicism.
Yes, purity and innocence and perfection.
Of course, pretty much none of the girls who went to these schools were actually Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So we see this symbol that is very explicitly Marian in its iconography,
mm-hmm.
being stripped of that and left with just this secular symbol of pure and chaste girlhood.
Yes.
That was also symbolized by the ideal class S relationship. So the white lily eventually became a symbol of S relationships.
And Yuri itself, they sort of go hand in hand, and there's definitely, obviously, reasons as to that. And I think it's just so interesting to see like how much those schools in that space really did influence the thinking at the time, even from like a religious perspective, and then the secular understanding of it.
And then also like I think one of the most important aspects of the S relationship in terms of understanding of lesbian relationships in Japan and portrayals of them in Yuri manga is that the S relationship was temporary.
Yes.
It was never under any circumstances to be continued after graduation.
Yes.
I took another quote. This one is quoting a sexologist from the Meiji period named Tokutaro Yasuda, who said that same-sex love among schoolgirls is a harmless form of adolescent love play and a preliminary step leading to a future career in cross-sex love. So it is very explicitly normalized as long as it's
stays within
transient.
Yeah, as long as it stays in your high school adolescence, then it's fine. And you see this subject discussed a lot with BL manga as well, about like it's fine if you have a gay relationship in high school, but there's an expectation of you getting married and having children once you reach adulthood.
Yep.
There's not a permanence to this, which obviously is not the actuality of reality.
One of these days, you gotta grow up.
Yes. And we have expectations and a family name to pass on to the next generation. So you better be meeting the standards. Yeah, it's...
Yeah. This is why, like, I enjoyed stuff like Kiriko Nananon's Blue. But it's like, please stop using female queerness as a metaphor for coming of age. Stop. You're not creative.
Yeah.
You're not pushing boundaries.
And I think that is the biggest thing, is that for a lot of Japan, for a long time, that is what these relationships, and BL as well, did. They represented a coming of age, growing up, and then, acceptance of yourself, and then moving on.
Yep. Or failing to grow up and committing double suicide with your lover.
As always, first choice is... oh, Japan.
Those are the only two options.
Only two options.
You either...
No hope.
Grow up and marry a man like you're supposed to, or you're defective and you kill yourself.
God.
But this is the specific shape that it takes in Japan. And this is what... I know I've gotten questions when I, offhand mention Class S or whatever. This is what it is. And as for me, I think that, just the look of Class S stuff, like the girls' schools and stuff, I eat it up.
Yeah.
I think it's aesthetic as fuck. But I don't like reading straight S stories.
Yeah.
Straight S S stories that play it straight.
Yes.
Because of the aforementioned reasons of it ultimately kind of erasing queer identity in women as just a phase, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same. I don't have a huge love for Class S stuff for many of the reasons that you just mentioned. Also, I don't know if it's just having grown up in a Catholic school environment. I must say it was a co-ed school, not an all-girls school, but all girls definitely was an option for my parents. I just never, having known the reality, I'm just like, that's not realistic to my experience. And so, but having also known people who went to single-sex schools, whether they be male or female, there's certainly a culture there of this type of community and interaction. And some people certainly lean into it, and then others just do not. And they go a little bit crazy in the other direction.
Yeah, and I did want to mention, while we were talking about Class S, kind of an interesting examination of it from a lesbian creator. So this is one of my favorite Yuri mangaka, Akiko Morishima. She has Yuri Bearstorm out in English, as well as pretty soon she'll have The Conditions of Paradise. But this is Japanese only, sorry. This is called Seigakuin Koka Daigaku Yakanbu. It's just a one-shot volume. It's not Yuri. It's about a girl who went to high school at this very stereotypical, idyllic girls' boarding school that we've been talking about. But for college, she goes to the night school engineering department at a college in Tokyo. And she ends up staying in a dorm with a bunch of crusty, disgusting boys. And a lesbian. Like a really butch lesbian. And what's interesting is that both her and the lesbian character have the same background at this girls' school. And they both went through the typical S relationship. And while the main character is straight and not attracted to girls at all, and really saw her S relationship as just this really deep friendship, and she's still friends with the girl, we see that the lesbian character saw these S relationships as sort of a free space to explore her burgeoning sexuality. And her sister was her first girlfriend.
There's certainly a lot of things that currently, within the current Yuri space, that you can examine as Class S relationships in a much more modern way and with a much more updated look on these sorts of relationships and situations.
Yes.
Yeah. And Yorikuma Arashi is another perfect example of that, of breaking down that sort of expectation of the Class S dynamic and directly challenging it.
The manga I have read. But it was back when I was worse at Japanese than I am now. And it was years ago. So I don't remember much of it. Not enough to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I do remember the anime, which is extremely angry. That series is so mad at the status quo.
Yes.
And I respect that.
Ikuhara does great work, as per usual. And I am in a similar state. I haven't actually read any of the manga. It's a low priority for me. I do hope to read it at some point. But the anime is fantastic. So definitely give it a watch if you haven't. But I think some of the quintessential titles I always think of when it comes to Class S is stuff like Maria Watches Over Us and Strawberry Panic. Just things that I think a lot of people are familiar with. They're not really series I have experienced myself just because they don't appeal to me. But just if you are familiar with those stories, that is the exact perfect example of the trope and how it is played. And in all seriousness, how it continues to show these relationships and the way that these girls interact.
Although I think if you wanted to look at a newer take on the Strawberry Panic type formula that is more explicit in its queerness, you could look at Kiss and White Lily for My Dearest Girl.
Yes.
Which is the quintessential Yuritopia. Everyone at school is a lesbian.
Yes.
Very, explicitly gay, I think, in a very escapist fantasy kind of way.
Yes.
But that would also fall into the category, I think.
Yeah. As does the recently first debuted in English, at least, Cocoon Entwined. It has a different atmosphere, or it definitely has, additional parts to it, but it certainly leans into the the expectations of the Class S situation. And if you haven't tried that one, read it. I bought the first volume last month and really enjoyed it, and I've heard nothing but great things about it. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah. Content warning if you are grossed out by vast amounts of hair.
Lots of hair. So much hair.
But it's a metaphor, G.
Well, the metaphor in Mysterious Girlfriend X is saliva. That still doesn't make it any less gross when you're trying to convince people to read it or watch it.
Yes. So I am one of the people who was too grossed out to read Mysterious Girlfriend X.
It's a great series.
I'm sorry. I've got a thing about spit. But I don't have a thing about hair. And I know that some people do.
Yeah.
And this will not be your favorite series if that's you. But I have a lot of thoughts about this volume. I actually am going to be making a video about it more in depth. But this is a series where a particular private school in the area is renowned for its students' hair. Mm-hmm. It has to be grown to a certain length. They're not allowed to cut it until their third year. I guess it's okay to spoil the
it's in the first conceit. 3 pages. It's not really a spoiler. Yeah. It's like the entire premise.
The other thing this private school is known for is its beautiful uniforms that almost seem to breathe. And they are sewn by the third-year students for their underclassmen, their little sisters, in a special ritual that also involves them getting their hair cut. So I'm sure you can put 2 and 2 together there.
Yes.
There's definitely some horror elements here. This idea of hair as
a living, breathing entity.
And as a symbol of traditional femininity and the requirements of being a good woman.
Mm-hmm. And the connection.
This feminine element.
The connection it brings to them amongst the students themselves, and then the tradition of the school.
And not being allowed to present yourself the way that you want to. The sort of rebellious girl is the one who refuses to grow out her hair the way that she's supposed to.
Yeah.
I feel like the way that the girls with the longest hair have to actually have their hair held by underclassmen behind them, or else they wouldn't be able to walk, is it's a pretty evocative image of restraints that are placed on women in a patriarchal society.
Symbolism.
Exactly. Okay, so this author has a Twitter, and I found it. And she posts some of her other work. Mm-hmm. She's got some BL that I guess is getting released online somewhere.
Yeah.
And she posted a whole bunch of it. And that, too, is dense. This lady's got some stuff to say, and she doesn't want to say it in any way resembling normal.
And you gotta respect that.
I'm here for it. And video upcoming.
Yes. So, yeah, it's not that S-Class doesn't exist currently. It certainly has, but it has definitely had this ability to evolve. I mean, there is obviously more classic S-Class stuff that is still coming out, but we do see a lot more series challenging this idea. Another one that I would say does challenge it to an extent is Sweet Blue Flowers, because if you're not familiar with that story, one of the girls does go to a very elite all-girls school where, although there's no true older and younger sister relationship, it still forms out of popularity and the younger girls wanting to attach themselves to a older girl who they like, and then how the older sister reacts to that, how she uses that to her advantage, or how she feels the pressure of it. There's a lot of really interesting things that are done, and that Shimura is able to go against expectation, because one side of our main couple does fall into kind of an S-Class relationship with the older student, but that's not really the main relationship, and it is for all intents and purposes, quite temporary. Not because her feelings for this other girl aren't real, but because of like circumstance and the people they actually care about. So it's not so much that homosexuality should just be like this act of adolescence, but more so that as a part of adolescence and as a part of figuring yourself out, it's just like one step. There's no sad ending of this double suicide, like you're broken because you don't want to grow out of this, or ultimately you do just get married and have kids. There's a lot of different relationships in Sweet Blue Flowers as well, and a lot of girls with various sexualities. There are quite explicit lesbians, and then we do also have bisexual women as well, and how that reflects on them and the relationships they choose to pursue. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely... I've seen the anime, but that is a series that is waiting in the American half of my collection.
It is very good, and the entire series, if you have not yet read it, is available in 4 2-in-1 omnibuses from Viz. After a tumultuous journey to reach us in English, it had some prior digital releases which never were completed, and then it has been through a lot. And finally, Viz has brought it to us in print. And it is wonderful.
So satisfying to see those editions on the shelf.
Yes. But in saying that, that doesn't mean that all Yuri is Class S stuff, especially a lot of the stuff we're seeing currently in English. I feel the whole genre has sort of moved on from that to something a little bit different now.
Yeah, it's definitely still there. I think the most maybe popular explicitly Class S series, or one that's drawing from that stuff, is probably Kiss and White Lily, which even the title is like so over the top that it's obviously drawing on it to be like, look at this aesthetic. But yeah, I would say most of the stuff we get doesn't really follow the strict Class S formula, in English at least.
Yeah, and I think that is also because of the Western perspective on it. Not to say that there's no want for non-Class S stuff in Japan, obviously there is, but I think that the stuff we see getting licensed, especially currently, tends to be within a much more diverse type of setup or story for these girls, whether that be just a more typical high school romance or whether that be between adult women, working women. There's a lot more variety we're seeing.
I will say that there is still a drastic overabundance of high school stories.
Yeah.
And that's true on the Japanese end from what I see as well. But I don't necessarily think BL is different in that regard.
I agree, and I think that's mainly because for most people, your first serious relationship starts in high school. Whether or not that's like the one that ends up sticking is yet to be seen, but for a lot of people, that's when they do start to fall into more serious relationships and start thinking about their future and the people they want to be with. So I think that's more so a symptom of that.
There's also even like for older readers in Japan, there's this idea of high school being this idyllic time to look back on.
Yeah.
And I've seen this like in discussions I've had with Japanese people about the types of manga and stuff they read, that, you know, there is this escapist aspect of going back to high school and reading about those years.
The nostalgia of youth without the responsibilities of adulthood.
Yeah, and maybe here in America, I don't know about Australia, but here in America, those years are definitely college. So it's a bit of a cultural difference.
Yeah, it's an interesting way how that has turned out, but I think it is just the expectation of the reader and what the reader wants to be reading. But I think for a lot of Western Yuri fans, we are sort of wanting, there's a large demand for stories that do feature adults, you know, working women, whether they be, you know, young adults, so people in their early to mid 20s, or even older, because I think a lot of people have gotten past the high school phase, and that is sort of the biggest difference between the two sides.
Yeah, and I think publishers are responding to that slowly but surely. there is a dearth of that content in Japan, but I also feel like what's there, they are looking into.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first one that got the big buzz was After Hours from Viz, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
And that is a 3-volume Yuri series about young adult women, one of whom is a DJ, and the other one, does she quit her job? I can't remember.
I think at the end she does, but a long time she's just not working because I think she's kind of going just through mental strain of, going through some stuff. So she takes some time off of work.
Yeah, but she finds this wild lady and learns about the underground DJing scene, gets into that, and they start dating. And it's pretty good.
Yeah. Solid series.
From the same magazine as Shimanami Tasogare. So.
And that makes sense. Considering as good manga with adults, it does have a lot of those themes of, well, I'm an adult and I'm supposed to have responsibilities, but I don't have any clue about what I'm doing and how to live life. So help.
Yeah, big same. I was going to mention the anthology series that are a trend in Japan and also quickly becoming a trend in English licensing and publishing.
Yes.
So there are some, I think maybe some of the Eclair volumes focus on high school students, but most of these anthologies follow adult and working women. The one that I've read is Whenever Our Eyes Meet, a women's love anthology. And it's just a collection of stories from all kinds of different Yuri authors about working women falling in love.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good.
Yeah. I think Yuri Life, I don't know if that's an anthology, but I do know that has working women in it.
It is an anthology.
Okay.
It's part of a series of anthology volumes.
Is it a full color? Yes, I think so. Maybe.
Really?
And there's also another single volume, and not an anthology, but it is about working women, is I Married My Best Friend to Shut My Parents Up, something along those lines.
Yeah. That's from the NTR creator. It is very different from NTR.
Yeah.
But when I read it, I was struck by how not different from NTR it was. But a lot of people liked it, so...
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I do know that one is about adults, which is why I mentioned it. But the Eclair anthologies are currently being released by Yen, and Yen are putting out a lot of these anthologies, I think more so than the other publishers.
We are also going to be, at some point, getting Yuri Kon, which is an anthology volume of stories themed around Yuri marriage. And I want to read that.
Yeah, there's a lot coming out and a lot we're seeing licensed, and I think, I don't know if we've said it on the podcast before, but I have certainly said it before in videos and on Twitter, that Seven Seas very obviously has the largest market share for Yuri in the West. They have been putting it out forever. It's what grew their popularity, and then now, although they have diversified quite a bit, they do still kind of represent the largest part of the Yuri market in English.
Yes, and they actually will be announcing 5 new Yuri licenses on the 18th.
Yes, which is very exciting.
Which will be before we upload
this. But after we record
it. After we record it.
So timing's a little bit
because
bad.
We both have lives.
Yes. Timing's a little bit bad on that, but hopefully maybe some of the Japanese series we do talk about in this podcast will see an English licensing announcement in the interim.
I know, I tweeted my hopefuls. So...
And we did get a question about why sort of Yuri hasn't really gone to like imprints, but more so just publishers themselves. Because BL comparatively has a couple imprints, and prior to the bubble bursting, it also had more imprints that were just BL imprints. Like, they just put out BL titles. Blue from Tokyo Pop, Sublime from Viz, DMP, or June from DMP, and Do as well. All their titles were BL or yaoi. But with Yuri, we don't really see that in English whatsoever, which is a little bit of an oddity, but I think it is mainly indicative of the fact that publishers, I don't think, need imprints anymore, especially for Yuri, because it has a wider audience. More people are...
Well, especially the stuff that we get. Like, I feel like if we got as wide a variety of Yuri in English as we get BL, there would be imprints, because there is a lot of deeply questionable content in Yuri manga, you know, that gives BL a run for its money. And we don't get it in English.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that publishers tend to, except for Seven Seas, who also picks up like smutty Yuri, which that's part of their brand, and it has been from the beginning, that they pick up sort of smutty series, monster girls, whatever. The fact that they pick up both kinds has just always been part of their brand.
Yeah.
But the other publishers, the toes they've dipped in the Yuri waters, they typically advertise those as LGBT manga and as being good representation, as being good titles for readers interested in good LGBT content.
Yeah.
I guess they do it with more quote-unquote wholesome BL titles as well, like I Hear the Sunspot, but that's like a small publisher. It's kind of weird. Like, I feel like if somebody made an imprint, then there would be more freedom to release Yuri that is weird and out there and maybe kind of problematic. Which, to me, is like, I might not read all that stuff, but I would be happy to have it.
Yeah. I feel like Seven Seas, although, I mean, they're very well known for just having their weird, smutty stuff on the Seven Seas title, but with the Ghost Ship imprint, which is like much more fan servicey, they are trying to, I guess, cover their asses a bit when it comes to, like, well, if it has the Ghost Ship label on it, you know that this is going to be a little bit risque and kind of out there.
18 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're definitely releasing the most, I guess, variety of Yuri. I think because they're not trying to, like, build a certain image with their Yuri. They're just like, we are the publisher that licenses Yuri.
Yes.
Here you go.
Yes.
So Seven Seas is who we got Eve from. Eve and Eve. Eve X Eve. Which is a sci-fi short story collection that, you know, was advertised as mature. It's not very explicit, but it is more explicit than other things.
Yeah.
And it's weird. Like, it's got Yuri pregnancy in it. It's got sex robots. It's kind of a strange title. I don't think any other publisher would go for it. I can't think of any other publisher that would be like, yeah, that's in our image. And then they will also be releasing the other Yuri title that I keep shilling, which is Scarlet. And this is a sort of smutty, dark fantasy series about a werewolf and a vampire who are like dark, twisted fairy tale narcotics officers. And it's super edgy, and I love it. Would anybody else release Scarlet? Maybe Yen, I guess.
Maybe, yeah.
It kind of fits with Murcielago. I mean, it's not as
out there
yet.
But that really brings into, again, there's a lot of different genre stuff currently coming out in Yuri manga. A lot of it from Seven Seas, Eve X Eve or Eve Eve, whatever that is a sci-fi, as you mentioned. They also have, in sort of the totally opposite direction of being not mature or explicit whatsoever, Beauty and the Beast Girl, which obviously has Monster Girl in it, which is another big part of Seven Seas' branding and image.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a cute, low-key fantasy vibe that I think matches with, like, you know, the Ancient Magus Bride or Girl from the Other Side. I think it fits right in with that niche of their catalog.
Yeah. Then we also have, as you said, Murcielago, Killing Eve. I know Yasuko Endo Stalks the Night is like a vampire comedy Yuri.
Yep.
So there's a lot of supernatural focused Yuri coming out in manga, and yeah, it allows the creator to be a little bit creative with the character dynamics and how they interact. And then the other big thing that we've seen more and more of just over the past year or so is a lot of Yuri light novels being licensed by most notably J Novel. Their big one that I have started to read is Side by Side Dreamers, which is a sci-fi series. First and Last Idol, which actually started from like Love Live fan fiction, Yuri fan fiction. There's also Other Side Picnic, which is sort of, it's a sci-fi but also like a zombie apocalypse type of fantasy series. And then of course Sexiled, which is very highly anticipated. The digital release is coming very, very soon. So J Novel Club has really tapped into this market of, again, recognizing the trends of readership. And there's been a huge influx with Yuri light novels across the board in Japan as well. So we are seeing more and more of those making their way to English. I think a lot of people find light novels a little bit intimidating, especially in the current market, because there are so many available. A lot of them are isekai. A lot of them are just kind of very formulaic and tropey. And so it's hard to know where to start unless you have a particular anime series or manga series you're a big fan of that also has a light novel series. Some of these smaller titles that don't have a connection to any other adaptation kind of get forgotten. And there is a lot out there. But it's interesting that despite BL's popularity, back in the day, back like 2006, 2007-ish, we did get a couple BL light novels, but after the sort of market crash and having to build it back up, despite BL's popularity, we're not seeing a lot of the Japanese BL novels get translated into English when we are seeing that for Yuri. So it's an interesting little comparison.
Most of the Yuri novels have nice covers. The BL novels, just saying.
Yeah. No, perfectly valid reason. Quite a few of those, I'm sure with, like, especially Sexiled, that will get a print release at some point. I
hope so.
I'm pretty sure the numbers will be there for them to be putting out print releases, because J Novel has been putting out some of their titles in print thanks to Seven Seas. Again, sort of like a partnership made in heaven, those two. And yeah, keep your eye out. There's a bunch of stuff to enjoy. Even if you're not really a fan of, as we said, like the Class S type of tropes. Neither of us are really fans of it, but yet we are definitely Yuri fans. So there's plenty out there.
Yeah, so that covers a lot of the gamut. So I thought we did get someone asking about our favorite Yuri manga. We've also got a couple requests for recommendations, specifically one-shots and stuff that's good for newcomers. So I thought we could just, similar to our BL episode, go into recommendations.
Yeah.
And hopefully not take as long as we did.
I think my biggest recommendation, especially for newcomers, and one that is one of my currently favorite releasing series, is the Kase-san series. There's currently 5 volumes. The sequel to it, Yamada and Kase-san, is also licensed and is very soon to be released. It is wonderful. I think, like with what I said with the BL episode, how Classmates is sort of a great representation of a realistic relationship between two teenagers and, you know, all the complexities of that. Kase-san captures that same feeling very, very well. You can understand why these girls are interested in each other, the realities of their relationship, how it is a healthy, realistic mix of like the romantic side but then also the physical attraction between these girls. And it's so good, guys. It's just really good and is probably my number one for like newcomers to try out.
Yeah, something I like about it that is perhaps more noticeable to those who are familiar with Yuri is that it is very rare to have any kind of like butch leaning character in Yuri manga. Which for me, like, I am femme-seeking femme most of the time. So I don't mind it as much as, like, other Yuri readers that I've met. but there's such a lack of, especially considering how many butch lesbians I've met in Japan, just in my own town. The fact that everybody's got to be so cute and beautiful all the time in Yuri manga is just not realistic at all.
Yeah.
And I like that this series has a character like Kase-san who is, you know, a tomboy, kind of a muscular build. She's still pretty, but like short hair.
Yeah, not preoccupied too much with femininity.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because I feel like the whole butch femme dynamic that they represent is like the standard in lesbian stuff in the West.
Yeah.
But it's really rare in Yuri manga, and I found it refreshing.
Yeah.
Kase-san's really good.
Yeah. My number one recommendation for beginners, for Yuri fans, for whatever. It's very, very good.
It's cute. It's wholesome. You can pick up a volume and just read it and just like be happy. It also follows them into college.
Yes, which is another comparison to classmates. You see these characters grow and leave certain periods of their life and change because of that and adapt to it. It's very, very good.
For some reason, the person who asked the question said that Bloom Into You is cheating, but I love Bloom Into You.
Yeah.
This got an anime. So did Kase-san, but Kase-san's was like a short movie, series of short movies.
Yeah, hour film.
And then Bloom Into You got a
full
anime series.
12-episode season.
And it's good.
Yeah. I have not yet watched the show. It's on my... I'm just really bad at watching shows. I'm so behind on everything. But
Me too.
The anime is very, very good. The anime. The manga is very, very good. And the 7th volume is out, I believe. Maybe. And then the 8th one is the final one. So we are very close to the end.
So one thing that I like about this series early on is that it takes place at a co-ed school.
Yeah.
And it's not like... Because Kase-san also takes place at a co-ed school. Like every once in a while in the background, you'll see like a guy like,
is there
standing there.
Hey.
You're like, hey. Oh yeah, it's a co-ed school. But Bloom Into You is nice because it does actually have male characters who are involved in the plot. One of them is some decent asexual, aromantic representation. I like him. He's cool.
He is.
You know, it's just, it adds to the realism of it to not be in this fantasy world where half the population doesn't exist. And to have other kinds of queer characters represented besides just lesbian women, cis lesbian women.
Yeah.
This series also has great representation in the form of a pair of mentor characters, adult mentor characters who really help one of the lesbian characters come to terms with herself and her feelings and are just a recurring positive influence, which is nice.
Yeah. Always good. It's nice to have mentor characters who aren't like weird, creepy, older.
Yeah.
Like, which seems
they're just like, you know, two adult ladies loving each other, living life.
Yep.
Being normal.
Always a good thing.
And I think that, you know, we get this whole arc with, is her name Sayako? Sayako-chan?
Something like that, yeah.
She's blonde. She's gay.
That's all you need to know.
She's got a lot of, like, baggage about it that I think is handled very realistically. And it's really meaningful for her to find people who have made it and are happy and have accepted themselves fully. I really liked how her character was handled. I like that we have a character who is out as a lesbian, out to herself at the very least, and knows that she is specifically attracted to girls and seeking girls. I feel like that's rare in Yuri manga. We always start with the character being like, oh no, I can't be in love with a girl.
Yeah.
So Bloom Into You just has a variety of queer characters, particularly queer women, in different stages of life, and it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, no arguments from me. It's absolutely wonderful, and as I said, it's ending very soon, so try it out if you have not yet.
There will be a light novel coming out.
Yes.
That is a spin-off about the Sayako, I think, Sayaka. I got it. But yeah, it'll be focusing on her, and I'm excited about it. She's probably my favorite.
Yeah. We mentioned already in this podcast, but Sweet Blue Flowers is wonderful. I really love all of Shimuro Takako's work. She is incredible, and I really like how realistically messy all of her stories are, just organically. None of these characters make the right decision all the time. and that's very true to life. I think everybody struggles with, trying to do things the way that they think they should be done, but then not realizing the implications of things, or making decisions in the moment that seem logical but don't end up being logical, or are just driven by emotion, and so they don't really think about it, and it's just reactionary. And I think that's very very true to life, and I can always appreciate a manga that encapsulates those feelings, those thoughts onto the page in a realistic way, in a genuine way. Sweet Blue Flowers is a little bit longer at 8 volumes, or 4 2-in-1 omnibuses. Again, I mentioned it does have both bisexual or pansexual, whichever. It's not really specified in regards to some characters, but they do say, I will say they do say bisexuality, and they do call characters bisexual, but as for pansexuality, they don't. And then just girls who are...
Baby steps.
Yeah. And then girls who are just lesbians, and how they interact with each other, how they understand each other, the relationships they have with each other, and their own personal realization of their feelings and relationships. It's very, very good. Yeah, I'm a big fangirl of Shimuro's work. I think that's no surprise to anyone. I do hope we see more of her Yuri stuff come to English, because she does have some other shorter works that are Yuri and are interesting, just premise-wise. I know there's one about a female wrestler who, I think she just disappeared, she leaves the wrestling circuit and leaves her coach / best friend behind, and then comes back a couple years later with a daughter, wanting to kind of mend the relationship with the woman she left behind. It's very, that's such a, I'm interested in reading that. But again, we don't have that in English. I do hope we see it someday in English. She has another title as well that I'm blanking on the name right now, but it is always nice when I think you can... Yuri, obviously, for a lot of people, they just expect a romantic relationship between two girls, and that's all they want, that's all they need, and they don't really need much story or framing around that. But for me, when I enjoy Yuri, I do like to have a little bit more to it, which is why I prefer things like Kase-san and Sweet Blue Flowers. And although they are ultimately about romantic relationships between these girls, you are getting to see more of their lives than just, they're falling in love, and then they kiss, and then that's it.
That's kind of what leaves me cold about a lot of the anthologies and stuff, is where it kind of starts and ends with a meet cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to read more than that.
Yeah, and I think that's also why I find it a little bit hard to get attached to one-shot books as well, or one-and-done volumes, because... Again, you don't have necessarily a huge amount of time to spend with those characters, and things don't really expand too much beyond that point.
Yeah, especially since Yuri tends to be such a slow burn in general. Yes.
You don't, unlike BL, where you can get from meeting, kissing to full-on sex.
A to Z in one chapter.
or over the course of six chapters. You don't get that so much in Yuri.
You do.
No, you do. But, not in the English side of it.
Not in English. One of my favorite, if I can be allowed to talk about something that only exists in Japanese right now for a second.
Go ahead.
So, I already talked about Akiko Morishima and how much I adore her. And we are getting The Conditions of Paradise, which is a one-shot volume from her that I haven't read, so I'm sorry I can't tell you anything about it. but I am super excited. But this one is called Renai Joshika, and it's 2 volumes complete. And it's one of those that's like a collection of intercollected short stories.
Yeah.
That's just all the women who work at a particular department of a particular company.
Mm-hmm.
It's super Yuritopia, like everyone just happens to be lesbians. But that's kind of what I really enjoyed about it. It's just so shameless. She says in the author's note at the beginning, she's just like, I love office ladies. I love working women in love with other working women. I wanted to read a story about working women in love, so I drew it. I love Yuri so much. I love girls. I respect that.
Uh-huh.
Her sense of humor is just so on point. And obviously, like, she is an out lesbian. As many Yuri mangaka are women, they're not necessarily queer women. A lot of them are, but very few of them are out as lesbian or bisexual or pansexual. But Akiko Morishima is very out and proud. And you see a lot of her experience just dating girls, loving girls, being a girl who loves girls, show through in this series that is just fun.
Yeah.
It's not really trying to be anything deep. It's just like, I like ladies. I'm gonna draw them. It's just fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's sometimes all you need.
Put that one on the reader surveys. One also out lesbian mangaka that some of you may be amazed that we haven't talked about yet is Milk Morinaga. Have you read any Milk Morinaga?
I've read The Secret of the Princess something. What's the title? Yeah, that one. I've read that one, and I think something like the Cherry Blossom one. Way back via my library. But I haven't read Girlfriends. I know that's just a travesty. I'm sorry. I'll get to it at some point. And she is absolutely like a queen within the Yuri space.
She's so prolific.
Yes.
So she can be a bit hit or miss for me. I didn't like Gakuen Police. I didn't like Himitsu no Recipe, which I read in Japanese. Otherwise, yeah, I liked the ones that I've read. So the ones that I think are the best are Girlfriends and Hana and Hina After School. I think both of those are really good. I think they're good for the same reasons. So go for the one you can find cheaper, I guess, if you're just looking for one to start with. Girlfriends is 5 volumes long, but it's 2 volumes if you buy it. Hana and Hina is just 3 volumes. She, again, is very much drawing from her own experiences, and her stories focus a lot, particularly those two, focus on girls falling in love with their best friend, coming to terms with the fact that the feelings they have for their best friend are not best friendly feelings.
Yeah.
What that means, what the difference is between loving someone as a friend and loving someone as a crush. Like, specifically in the context of girls. I really love how she deals with conflicts that a lot of young queer girls have, where it's like, but I hug my friends all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I kiss my friends on the cheek all the time. You know, it's totally fine to touch my friends. So how do I know that I like her? And it deals with that in a very realistic way, in my opinion. And it just shows the progression from friends to lovers in such a natural and sweet way. She also does deal with the issue of sexuality. You know, people associate her with generic pure Yuri, but I feel like that's not really reflected in her work very often.
Yeah.
Because her characters are very sexual. You see the characters realizing that they are attracted to their friend alongside realizing that they are in love with them. And you see sort of the natural progression through when they start to date and they start to think about doing a little more than kissing, what that entails. I think in Girlfriends, there's literally a scene where the girl has to Google how girls have sex, which is relatable. Yeah, it's just, it feels very, like there's an escapist element because obviously Milk Morinaga, just like Morishima in her author's notes, is just shameless.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, I love writing about high school girls in cute uniforms. I wish my uniform had been this cute. I wish I could have worked a part-time job with a cute uniform. So she's totally self-indulgent. But at the same time, her stories are so honest and so down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I recommend particularly, I think Secret of the Princess is a good place to start with her too, just because it's short.
Yeah, again, that's one that is a 1-volume release.
It's a one-shot volume, and it's got fake lovers trope, so if you like that stuff, it's cute. And then my other recommendations for her would be Girlfriends and Hana and Hina After School.
A lot of the series we've already talked about in the podcast are ones that I have enjoyed and I do recommend. There's also a lot of Yuri that is available in English that I haven't read just because of lack of time, lack of space, lack of interest. Like with BL, I am pretty picky about my Yuri consumption.
Yeah.
So I don't buy every single Yuri title that comes out, but there's plenty that I am interested in and just haven't gone around to. Things like Yuri is My Job, I've heard pretty fun things about.
Yuri is My Job.
Yeah.
Gets better with each volume. I like it a lot.
That's good. That is good. Yeah, as I said, I've heard really good things about it. Futari Baya, I think which is a Tokyo Bia, is a Tokyo Pop release. I've heard pretty good things about that from the Japanese side. Like, it's fairly popular. I haven't read it, but
that's a Yuri Hime title.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people really enjoy that one. Not really super interesting to me, but one that I'd like, if my library had it, I'd check it out.
Yeah. It just sounds like cute girls doing cute things, except in this case there's only 2 of them, and they live together.
Yes.
But, like, not in a gay way,
yeah.
but, like, maybe in a gay way.
Maybe in a gay way. I mean, anything's possible. I also wanted to mention
2 girls chilling in a hot tub.
5 feet apart because they ain't gay. There's also Whispered Words, which is one that I have read. That series does a lot of very good things. A lot of, it's an interesting one because it is inherently comedic as well. There's like quite a bit of humor to it. It isn't a Eurytopia title either. We do have multiple female couples, but we do, like, one of our main characters, her dad is a very prolific character. Her brothers are very involved with the story and they go to a co-ed school, yada yada yada. And the other girl, her brother, is also a very prolific character, a very involved character, and one of the side characters who is, they never say the words, could arguably be called a trans girl. I don't want to say that that is the case because it's still, like, not really confirmed. Within the manga, he cross-dresses under the influence of his younger sister, and he does it also to get the attention of the girl who he knows that she's interested in girls, so that's, like, the motivation for it. I like his character, and therefore I do not like how the manga treats him or them.
Yeah. Oh my god. So many characters like that.
There's a lot of issues with that, but I will say overall, like, it's a pretty solid series. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, and I wouldn't say it's a must read, but if you do like friends to lovers and stories that do deal with homophobia and that sort of stuff, it does incorporate a lot of that, as well as supportive family and lots of different things. But there's also, like, some major issues that make me like, oh, it's maybe like a 3 out of 5 rather than like a 4 out of 5. So yeah,
that's how I felt about Beauty and the Beast girl. I had some issues.
Yeah. But with Whispered Words also, it's one of One Piece Books' earliest releases, and it shows. Like, the typesetting, the lettering it's bad. There's a lot of issues with it. A lot of really, like, fixable issues, and I don't know why it got to print the way it did. So often the words are like so small within the bubble, but then they're also like broken over multiple lines, like single words will be broken over 2 lines, even though there's like so much space, and also it should just be larger anyway. One Piece Books has vastly improved since then. So it's...
Yeah, well, that's a lot of those smaller publishers.
Yes.
Vertical's typesetting used to be pretty dire.
Yeah.
My Paradise Kiss volumes are like, oof.
Not great.
Oof.
That just gives you an excuse so you can get the new 20th anniversary edition for later in the year.
There we go. I need to buy Nana first. Don't be telling me to buy other Yazawa stuff before I buy the most important one.
But Nana is a Viz title. It's always going to be available. Vertical.
But there's 21 volumes.
So that series still sells. They're not letting it go out of print yet. You'll be fine.
They should make a box set.
Yes, they should.
I would buy it if it was a box set. It's one of my favorite manga. Why don't I have it?
Well... circumstance. Sometimes that's just how it works out. We mentioned Citrus. That's fairly popular. I haven't read it. I haven't watched the show. I know there's a sequel coming out in English. It's definitely on like the more
smutty.
Yes, smutty. I don't know if smutty's quite the right word, but it's definitely on the more smutty side.
I mean, there's a lot of spit.
Yes.
I did watch the first episode of that one. But it is kind of dub-conny. So I was like,
No thanks. But it is very, like, well-known, and it's very popular, so, and it's available from 7 Seas, so if you're interested, you can watch the show. If you're wanting more, you can buy the manga. The sequel has been licensed by 7 Seas. It's all there.
If you're interested in, like, ugly, messy soap operas, other than Citrus, if you liked Citrus, and you want more, you mentioned...
If I Could Reach You.
Yeah. Everything I've heard about that one is that it is sudsy soap.
Yes,
so.
Because that one is about a high school girl who lives with her brother and her sister-in-law and has a big crush on her sister-in-law, who is obviously her brother's wife. So, you know, drama. There's issues there with that potential relationship.
We will also... Let me just look up the publisher real quick. Tokyo Pop. So, a soap opera about working women that we will be getting is called Still Sick.
Oh, yeah.
And this series is quite popular in Japan right now. I've heard really good things, and I'm excited for that one because I am a working woman, and I'm always excited to read about other working women.
Yeah, I forgot they licensed that. Honestly, it was on my list of, like, recent licenses, but I saw the title, I didn't know what it was, I didn't know who licensed it, I was like, what is this?
What?
Yeah.
Why
did I
see it in the
down?
bookstore all the time, but I haven't picked it up because now it's going to be in English. And then, just a slightly more detailed plug for the most important Yuri license that's coming up. A Tropical Fish Yearns for Snow is set in beautiful Ehime Prefecture.
They should hire you for tourism, honestly.
Nobody ever writes about Ehime. Nobody cares about Ehime. Even Japanese people don't know where it is. Anyway, this is a really sweet, slow burn series. I don't know how far the characters are gonna get. There's not a whole lot of romance here. There's a whole lot of crushing and intense teenage emotions, but not a whole lot of acting on those feelings. So if you're looking for explicit lesbian relationships, this isn't probably your series. But this is about the 2 club members of a school that's actually based on a real school pretty close to me that has an aquarium club. And so these are the 2 members of this fictional version of this real school's aquarium club. Lots of fish metaphors, pretty pictures of the ocean. It's very understated. It's very atmospheric, you know, idyllic Japanese countryside. And the characters just feel like real kids.
Yeah.
Who are just, like, dealing with their real kid shit. Like, the most recent volume, you know, the one character is a 3rd year now, and she has to figure out what the hell she's going to do with the rest of her life. And the volume was basically just focused on her figuring that out. And it was handled really delicately and really well. The way she got support and pushback from various people in her life and just trying to figure out her own feelings about everything. So this is another Yuri title that is run in not a Yuri magazine, but it is marketed as Yuri. And I love it a lot.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I was very excited when Fizz announced it, and I remember you saying, I called it, and I was like, you certainly did.
Yeah. Okay, so the other one that I'm going to call.
Yeah.
I'm saying it now before the 7 Seas announcements, because if it's not 7 Seas, I think someone's going to pick it up soon. This is called Joryu Sakato Yuki, and it started out on Pixiv, I think, and then got printed. This series is set in the Taisho era, like 1920s-ish. It's about this, like, cool, suave, eccentric, popular female author who is not so subtly based off of Nobuko Yoshia, I think, who wrote a lot of Class S girls novels and was famously super gay.
Yeah.
But it's about her and her budding romance with the waitress at her favorite cafe to write at. And the atmosphere is very nice, historical. You know, who doesn't love a series set in the 1920s?
I certainly do.
I do too. You said Yuri and Taisho, and I said,
heck
thank
yes.
you. And the other reason I think it'll be picked up soon is because it's only 2 volumes long and it is complete. So it's not much of a commitment. But I thought that that was a pretty perfect length for it. I would have read another volume of it, but I didn't feel like it was rushed at all. So I'm calling it now. See how wrong I am.
But it is very exciting with this upcoming 5 different licenses. Hints that a light novel will be included with that. So that's always exciting too. Yeah, there's just so much Yuri within the Western manga market currently that it's just, there's so much. And it's really exciting. And it's really nice that we do live in the current market where it is sustainable for publishers to be putting out all this stuff. And people are buying it, obviously. The other publisher that I wanted to mention, which we should have mentioned in our last episode as well, but that is Kuma Publishing, which is, if you're unaware, a new imprint from Faku, who are a hentai publisher. So obviously heterosexual erotica for the most part. But Kuma is their LGBT imprint, so it will include both BL, yaoi, whatever you want to call it, and Yuri explicit manga. They do have 2 BL titles already released. They have licensed 2 more BL titles as well as a Yuri title, which all sound very interesting. And I've seen good stuff. People seem to be very happy with them and very excited for each of them. I am definitely going to be picking up most, if not all, of their titles that they've released so far and will be releasing in the future. So yeah, there's a lot.
I'm really happy that they just went ahead and went for that femboy dom for their second title.
And
you got me.
Yeah, within my videos I don't really talk too much. I don't buy a lot of hentai, like heterosexual erotica, just because I don't really feel the need to. I feel like it's not usually written in a style that I enjoy, but I really like to see that queer erotica is getting more of exposure in the West and getting at least a little bit represented, because as we all know, like a lot of, even BL, when there's explicit scenes, it is mainly censored artwork by the Japanese artist. It's not by the English publisher.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Faku really advertises, is as a publisher, they're very close to the artists that they publish, which is cool. And when they advertise an uncensored version, more often than not, that means that they have gone and requested that the artist decensor the art themselves, and the artist has agreed to that and given them specially uncensored art.
Yes. So that's really exciting. And if you're interested in any of their titles, do support them. As I said, they do have a Yuri title coming up, which, having seen screen caps, looks very good.
It's very cute. So this artist is named Sho, and some of their art, manga, has been on Faku's catalog for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Not this specific one, obviously, but others, short stories. And I have been a fan of theirs for quite a while, so...
Yes, so very exciting. And that's just a new development over the past maybe 3-4 months. So if you are wanting more erotic fiction and comics for queer couples, then check them out when they are available.
Yeah.
So has that answered all the questions? Or no?
I think it's answered a good majority of them. Let's see. Personal history with Yuri. I like girls, and I like gay stuff. So. I used to be homophobic in high school, but once I got out of that shit in college and figured out I was bi, it was pretty obvious to go to that when I could find it.
Yeah, I think we spoke before recording, but I think both of our personal histories with the genre is more recent and I think a lot less impactful than our experiences with BL, just because of like how culture is. For me, Yuri was just sort of like a additional romance type of series. I said it in the last podcast, I'm not within the LGBT community, but I have a bunch of friends, bunch of family. I've never had an issue with people who are, and again, like I've always seen it just as romance with different types of characters. So it was just like when titles that were more interesting to myself became more readily available, I tried them, I enjoyed them, and just sort of went on from there. So yeah, I'm sorry that I don't have like a big dramatic story about it.
Yeah, I mean the availability has been a thing too. When I first heard about Strawberry Panic from my friend, first of all, I was still, like, homophobic. And then also, to me, it just sounded like Love Hina without the male loser in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really appeal to me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until we started getting titles that were, like, committed, honest, well-written romances between girls that I was like, all right, I'll read that.
Yeah. And I think that's also the difference in why, because Yuri as a genre hasn't been as well established in the West compared to BL, that it is a little bit, for a lot of people it is more like a recent thing. They didn't necessarily grow up with it.
Yeah.
Especially like fans of our age group. So the current market is vastly different from even 10 years ago, and in a very good way. You know, that's... People complain about what's available and what's not available all the time within the manga community, but we are spoiled for choice, honestly.
Yeah.
There's so much manga here than we ever had, 10, 15 years ago. And the fact that it is so readily available and it's still being licensed at a incredible speed, a speed that I will never be able to keep up with, is really
I will also say that as someone who always looks at the Yuri shelves in the bookstore here in Japan, just like with BL, when you are asking for every title to be available in English, you are wishing on a monkey's paw. I know we got a question about like young characters in Yuri. There is a trend in Yuri manga right now of huge... You think age gaps in BL are a problem? I'm talking 13-year-olds with like adults.
Yeah. Yikes.
So be careful what you wish for. Gotta be very careful when I'm reading the synopses on the books I pick up. So if you think that Yuri is clean and pure because that's all we get in English, no.
So, I think that we have covered everything. Let us know your thoughts, your opinions on any of the series that we've talked about, any of the topics we sort of brought up, your own favorite series you're excited for, series you hope to see licensed, whether or not Ray guessed some of Seven Seas' more recent licenses. And if you've read any of these series or read any of these light novels as well, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on those. and your own experience, whether you, unlike us, really love the Class S trope, or if you are looking for more adult focused series,
or if you grew up on Strawberry Panic.
We want to hear it all. So yeah, let us know in the comments below. As always, both of our social media will be linked in the description. You can follow me on Twitter at collectingg, and you can follow Ray on at Whimpics.
Whimsical Pics.
Whimsical Pics. And watch her videos if you haven't, especially considering she has her upcoming Cocooned Entwined video, which I'm very excited for. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, this channel, please do, especially if you want to follow with these particular podcasts. I am trying to get these onto other platforms as well, just for ease of listening, things like Spotify, etc. But it's an ongoing process. I don't really have the time to dedicate to it currently, so
we are both super amateurs and
working, studying, everything else full time. So yeah, when I find some time, I'll figure it out. But until then, please continue listening on this channel. And is there anything else that you want to add, Ray?
Yuri's really good. Girls kissing girls. I like it.
Yes, always a thumbs up from me. So next month, our topic is going to be yokai manga and yokai in manga for our Halloween October special. So if you want to leave your questions for that in the comments as well, that would be appreciated. Or as I said in the beginning, you can also tweet at us and we'll read them there. But thank you guys so much for listening. As always, I am G from Simply G.
And I'm Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
And we'll see you in the next podcast. And bye till then.
Bye-bye.